So good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. So I hope you are enjoying your time here on campus. As per Kate White, I am Michael Bustamante, the Rice and Country Program Coordinator here at the Center for Languages and Intercultural Communication at Rice University. And so we at the center, also known as CLIC, offer 8 summer study abroad language programs all around the world. Those countries include Argentina, China, France, Germany, India, Japan, Korea, as well as Spain. Rice and Country is an academically focused, 6-week-long summer language immersion program that offers our university students, as well as other university students from around the United States, an opportunity to earn 6 official Rice credits by completing 2 target language courses abroad. Essentially, 6 weeks abroad, 2 target language courses, 6 official Rice University credits. In addition to coursework, Rice and Country students sign a language pledge. Upon signing this pledge, you are promising as a Rice and Country student to exclusively speak the target language abroad. For example, Spanish in Spain, Japanese in Japan, Korean in Korea. Moreover, students are assigned a language partner. Language partners are often peers from the foreign university, same age, same language. And these peers meet with our Rice and Country students on a weekly basis, one-on-one ratios, to further enhance their language practice. While abroad, students stay with pre-screened host families to further maximize and enhance the engagement with the local community. Speaking of the local community, our Rice and Country students also contribute to that local community via participation in community engagement activities. These activities range from teaching at an elementary school students, or at a nursing home, or assisting at a local hospital. Finally, Rice in Spain, unlike the other Rice and Country programs, is unique in that it has a clear medical career focus in the coursework and activities completed throughout the duration of the program. Now, for some more detailed information about each of these aspects of Rice and Country, I present Ms. Naoko Ozaki, Language Pledge.
Thank you, Michael. So, as he just said, language pledge. Our students sign this language pledge before they take off to go to the destination. So I took a group of students to Japan, so I will give you some examples of that. So with language pledge, it was like my students knew that what they were getting into, but I feel like their view of what it was going to really look like was kind of like this. Kind of dark, not really clear, and then eventually they get to this point where they can say, ta-da, I know I can do this. I have acquired the skills and I'm confident. And so they kind of look like that later on. So how did they get there? So after a lot of ice cream cones, and they loved matcha green tea ice cream. And they came back saying, fun, okay, that's great. When I talked with language partners, I learned young people's expressions, which is great. And then they came back saying, I recommend study abroad opportunity to everyone at school, which is a really great compliment to us. Okay, so let me show you how did they manage to speak to each other, not just to local people in Japan, in Japanese. So talking with local people in Japanese, it's kind of given. You're surrounded by people who don't speak your language, English or Chinese, for example. They kind of have to speak in the target language. So, but I, as an instructor, had to create that kind of opportunity. So this is one segment from my students trying to give instructions to other. So 3 students gave instruction on how to draw pictures that they were looking at. The girl drawing the pictures did not know what it was that she was drawing. So the students are talking to her. So the focus was not the language structure or pronunciation even, but they were trying to explain. And then here, the students, so now they're explaining to her even more. And so then she's kind of done with the drawing of this little segment, And now they said, oh, by the way, you need to switch the order of the characters. So she's now going like, now you tell me? Right? So by making the focus shifted to the content rather than the language structure, students learn to use the language as a means of instruction, communication, rather than the product that they were focusing on. So after that, they came back saying, I now feel more comfortable speaking Japanese in most situations, and I'm very proud of them. So they came back having learned to master the ninja gesture, and they also spoke in Japanese at the nursing home. This was sort of our cute thing that we all did, because one of the students had thick eyebrows, so we just said, Mr. Honorable Eyebrows, and then everyone just did the eyebrow signature. So that became sort of our shared common thing to do, but without having gone on this trip, maybe they would not have learned even the word for eyebrows, because that's not in our textbook. So after they came back, this was in the class, and I gave students, I put the students into groups of 3s, and they had to just communicate in Japanese. The only instruction I gave them was the 3 of them had to speak in Japanese the entire time for 15 minutes, and they could use the casual form since now they're friends instead of talking to me as an instructor, which I can see in the classroom, and I can assess that. But among friends, but also using honorific and humble and extra modest, everything combined in one is what I was going for. So let me just show you a little bit of the video. So here, if you understand Japanese and if you can hear it well, that you will understand what they're talking about. But more than just the content, I want you to focus on how comfortable they look when they're speaking in Japanese. They're no longer thinking of the conjugation, the verbs, or anything like that. They're now focusing on what it is that they want to talk about. If you hear it, they're talking about something really silly, as always, but they really do have a good time using the language rather than not really knowing what's happening and focusing on the structure. And so that is the product of having had the language pledge that they took seriously enough to really communicate in the target language on study abroad program. So next is Host Families by Dr. Ye.
Yes, I'm Ye. I teach Chinese and take students to China, and I'm going to talk about the host family, which is a very integral part of our study abroad curriculum. And of course, the goal is to immerse them in everyday situation in the target country. We tried dormitory actually in Chinese program, and it was not very successful because in the dormitory there are so many students from other countries, and the language they use is English. So it's very easy to resort to English. So we decided we have to do host family. And in China, host family is a very new concept. So the family we recruit usually are young parents with young kids. And the motivation for them is to expose their kids to American culture and practice some English. So we do ask our students to leave about half an hour a day. Okay, if the kids want to practice English, that's the time that we'll do it. And then we do a lot of, program orientation for the host family and also for our students to make sure the expectation and the responsibility from both sides are very clear. Now, we also take advantage of the host family context to maximize students and cultural acquisition, and they even started to get to know their host family before they go to China through email to introduce themselves, get to know each other. And in the host family context, they will keep a language journal to record the expressions that don't learn from the textbooks and they learn from the host family. And we have very specific texts the students will do with host family each week. So for example, the first week is to know all the information about the host family, their education, their career. And then here students are learning a dish from the host family, and they have to learn the ingredients and then teach other students how to do that. So you will see different topics every week. And the most important thing we do in not most important, it's a very important thing we do in our host family. They have to collect data from the host families. So we will use those data as learning materials in classroom. And they will record everyday expressions from their host parents. For example, I always tell them that in the States, when you go to school, the parents will say, "Have a good day." What do the Chinese host family say to you, right? When you come back, parents will say, how was school? What did the host parents say to you? So record these everyday expressions, and then we will share with a classmate. And then if we have also, I connect their interview with their host family to our unit in our classroom. If we talk about American Dream versus Chinese Dream, I will have the interview their host family, get their opinion. And then a lot of pragmatic units, which I mentioned this morning, that they will make compliments or requests to their host family and record it again and reflect on their interaction, reaction, and then we will also use that in our classroom. So this is a host family. And the next one is curriculum commitments. Yes.
So there's a theme here. As you can see, we try to connect the host family to the curriculum, and when we do community engagement or service learning or community service, everyone has a different label for it. We also want it to be directly linked to the curriculum. I think one of the things that becomes evident is oftentimes community engagement is an add-on to a course. It's not really connected with what you're doing in the classroom. So as far as academics are concerned, one of the things that we worked really hard to obtain was direct credit, meaning most students, when they go abroad, they have to go through an advisor, they have to get transfer credit, and sometimes they come back and they're upset because the course abroad doesn't equal the one here because they weren't advised well. So we don't have to do that, worry about that with our students here at Rice because we've obtained direct credit, particularly because our Rice faculty accompanies each group of students. That does not mean that we take away from the students the opportunity to be taught by a local instructor because we think that's very important. They need to be exposed to the teaching system in the country of choice. So we really work in a collaborative way with a local instructor in the host country. And we actually start working pretty early to develop the syllabus together, to develop the content, to pick the book. In the particular case of Argentina, for example, it was very important for us to have a book that had the variety of Spanish spoken in Argentina and not the standard that you see in most American textbooks or peninsular. What we do in 6 weeks is cover the entirety of the second year courses, which is a little bit insane, I would have to admit. But obviously you have the immersion that works in your favor to get there. And we also have Distribution 1 credit for these courses. Distribution 1 basically means that they count towards some of the requirements that some students need for their degrees. We don't have a language requirement on our campus, so we're pretty proud of the numbers we have without having a language requirement at all. But Distribution 1 does also help to get students interested, despite the fact that they have a large variety of courses to pick from, so we're still actually competing with other courses that offer D1. So for community engagement, as Michael said at the beginning, we have a variety of things that go on in the different programs that we have. In the case of Argentina, I think one of them was one of the most difficult engagement programs I've done. I did this program in Seville as well. To work with adults that have disabilities was really difficult for my students because if they had a hard time understanding the language that their host family was using with them, it was harder with people who had speech impediments and things of that nature. So that was really a test to their patience and their openness to be able to work in this day home for adults with disabilities. But each faculty is very much engaged and works with the local provider or institution to find community engagement projects that are meaningful and that aren't your typical U.S. student goes abroad and builds a house and then that house falls apart and it can't be sustained by the community, right? So we want something that's sustainable, that's meaningful, and that is more for the benefit of the people there than it is for the students, right? Because that's a little bit of a twisted way to view service abroad, right? I want it to serve my students so they can get exposure to things. Well, here we want it to be truly something that the community needs and wants. So the way we try to connect the classroom to the community is each faculty has thought of ways to have lesson plans in preparation for the community engagement, lesson plans that ask them to complete specific tasks during the community engagement activity, or lesson plans that function as a way to reflect about the activity that was done for community engagement. And also in my case, and I think in other instructor cases, my students were in charge of the programming several times throughout the 6 weeks. So they were actually having to sit down and kind of do what I do and try to create a lesson plan. And they sort of really understood and appreciated what it meant to create a lesson plan and were much kinder to me when I would take longer to return their materials. So they had to sit down, think about a lesson plan, think about an activity, in our case, that was appropriate for adults with disabilities. In the case of this Saturday, we woke up at like 5 in the morning and we went to interview families that were wanting to get free housing in one of the poorest areas of Argentina. So we practiced question and answer situations in the classroom. I got the questions beforehand from the organization, and my lesson plan was around preparing them what it would be like to go to these homes and do these surveys and ask these questions. So we reviewed question words and how do you formulate questions. And you can add the cultural element where you have to talk about, well, how do you do it in a sensitive way, because you're talking about money and people wanting homes. So to end, I'm not going to put the audio for you because it's not necessary for what I want to demonstrate. I think one of the most valuable things is that you can take the experiences in the city and turn them into a lesson plan. So I always take the lesson plans that I want to teach with me, but I never end up using them the way they are. So in this case, we were taking a tour of where their White House in Buenos Aires, which is the pink house actually. And we just happened to be doing this tour, and there's a protest. I don't think this video captures it. And there's a tour guide, and all of a sudden we see this wave of people coming and they're protesting. So I totally changed my lesson plan, and we had a whole lesson plan on looking at the vocabulary and the words that are used in the signs and what does that say, right? So always linking the language to the culture and thinking about what is that language telling us about what's going on. And then here, when they were finally feeling comfortable, usually it was the nurses that were up at the front doing the activities for the adults with disabilities. Finally, one of my students, they felt comfortable enough, and then some of them are sitting down to lead the class in doing some arts and crafts for these adults with disabilities. Although I didn't foresee that some vocabulary that they needed was like glue and words that, textbooks don't have these words because they don't have the situation. So we really had to focus on, okay, how do you say scissors? How do you say glue? How do you say glue on, etc. And so they did Mexican loteria for folks in Argentina with U.S. Symbols that are important so they could learn a little bit more about the U.S. and practice their cutting. These are adults with disabilities, so they practice cutting and cutting straight and coloring and so forth. So that's it. Language partners.
So as Michael already mentioned, we do all of our programs, we do have language partners, and the way that they work is that each student is assigned to one language partner. They are very, very important and crucial for our programs. They are like one of the highlights. The students really appreciate those language partners. They learn so much through them. But something as important is that we don't just send them out, say, okay, you're going to go have 3 hours with your language partner, but it is extremely structured. So, for example, in my program, as the faculty led, I decided that my language partners are going to be doing different things. They're going to be assigned a specific topic that they're going to have to work with it. So, for example, we were studying the difference between how is the university system in France versus the US, and that was an information that they gathered through their conversations with their language partners in group of 4. So that was a specific topic. They were supposed to go complete a task, which I'm going to give you an example of it, where the language partner was their guide to the community and how it is appropriate to do certain things. So it wasn't about, do I conjugate my verb correctly? Am I using the right adjective? It was more about what language is appropriate when I'm trying to get a task done. What do I have to use? It was also about discovering the lifestyle of young people. So what does it mean being a French young person in that community? So they were able to do that. And of course, they also had some free time to do whatever they wanted. Many of them traveled with their language partners, but that was outside of the hours that was designated for them. That was just different. Many of the language partners also were extremely helpful, and they came with us to the service learning, where they helped my students engage with the community, and that was extremely helpful. At the same time, I tried my best to ask my students to record all of those interactions, so this material could be used either during the program to give students feedback on many different aspects of the language or the culture, or later on now I have a great resource that I can use for my students here who do not have maybe the opportunity to go abroad. So I had a picture, so I'm going to come back to the previous one. This is, for example, a conversation that they had two language partners. I mean, in this case, one of the language partners was sick, so we have two language partners and three of the students talking about the French education system and how is it different. I have it all recorded. That's something that I went back and we reflected on it afterwards in class. This is an activity that I created as a task for my students and their language partners. So it had a pre-activity, during activity, and post-activity. So I sat and I thought, what do my students really need that would be useful for them? And I thought that going and getting something done, either ordering a coffee or even going and buying a book that they need, it was extremely hard for them. They didn't know how to do it. And oftentimes they would order what was the most simple thing and was right there. So they didn't like coffee, but I'm going to just order this coffee. And then they would end up with something they didn't like. Or I don't know what this sandwich is, but I'm never going to ask the question. So I'm going to just order it. And we had my students even ended up purchasing the wrong phone, like the contract. And I didn't say anything, even though I was watching them, because they did not dare ask me a question. So I wanted to say, okay, I'm going to help you people. So I said, go sit with your language partner and together record this conversation, decide where you're gonna go, what is the language that you need, what is important for you to know. Then with your language partner, go to that place, either the bookstore or the bakery shop, anything that you like to do. Your language partner is going to be invisible, but it's going to be there with you. You do whatever you need to do. And one of my students actually was extremely brave. She was the most reserved student I had. She actually recorded even that interaction, which nobody did. And that's actually amazing. And then come back with your language partner, sit and talk about it. How did it go? And that conversation is amazing. How they go back and they say, yeah, that was great that you did this, but this phrase that you used actually wasn't that polite, so I think the guy didn't really like it and he ignored you. So it was a great feedback for my students, and we were able to work on it. They had to submit a work to me, and I have all these videos. So right now I have about 10 of those videos gathered from pre and post activity. And here is what most of my students are saying. I just gathered a few of them about when I asked them about at the end of the program what it meant for you having a language partner. So they said that one of the people who made this experience unique and exceptional was Timothy, my language partner. I appreciate him because he did a lot for me, more than what was even necessary, and that is true. I think my work with him has really helped improve my French. He put me in touch with his friends, and for me it was crucial to be around people who were not judging me and always tried to engage with me despite the fact it was not always easy. And all of those were written in French at the end of the program. We had to translate them, but this is how far they got. So, and this is from other people. So they helped me identify and analyze my problems. The program as a whole exceeded my expectations, having had the opportunity to work with them. So they only had to say, that was the highlight of the program. The best thing that ever happened to me in this program was one of them, this. And this is a picture of them, of all of my students at the end with their language partners. They love them, and most of them are still in touch with them. And one of them will actually come and visit us this summer at Rice. So we are very excited. I'm very excited for them. And I'm going to let my colleague talk now about the medical profession.
Okay. Hello, I'm going to be very brief. So the program in Spain is a little bit special because it focuses on Spanish for the medical professions. Our partner university is Universidad de Navarra in Spain, and the program still has the same components as the other ones, but the students are already at the intermediate to advanced level, and it focuses on, as I've said, on language for specific purposes. And what is different is the curriculum of the program. So you may have noticed with what my colleagues were talking about, that at the center we focus on interaction and mostly on the spoken interactions of our students. And we want to develop that when they go abroad. So the program in Spain has two courses that complement each other very well. One is a language course on Spanish for the medical professions. It's the one given by the Rice instructor. And it focuses not only on the more traditional skills, but also on interactional competence. And we have created materials and lessons in which we analyze recordings that were collected by CLIC from the point of view of language use in the interaction in the doctor-patient communication. And the second course is a custom course that the University of Navarra has created for us. It has different components. Mainly, the students do hands-on workshops at the School of Medicine with standardized patients. They have a great center of simulation center, and they focus on conducting the medical interview. So the students get to observe, and then they get to practice the simulations with a standardized, with actors actually that play patients. They also have debriefing sessions focused on language at the Language Center, and they do medical shadowing at the university's hospital. And something that that to me stands out about this program is this the articulation of this curriculum, that they have the language courses, but they also have the more practical approach to it, and everything is related. And the students learn through three ways. They analyze, they practice, and then they observe in real life. And everything is revolving around the same topic of the doctor-patient interaction. And I've picked two comments from student reflections. These were also written in Spanish. I translated them. So for student, he said, I feel very good about my medical skills, especially because I learned everything in Spanish in a different place and in a different culture. So I think this is telling that the student gained confidence in his skills and when he's going to communicate with patients in the future. And well, also I should mention, of course, most of these students are pre-medical students, which we have a lot of those at Rice University. That's why it's interesting for them. And the second student saw that connection between learning in the classroom and then practicing in simulations and watching and observing the same topics that we had been talking about in the during the rotations they call at the hospital, the university's hospital. And tomorrow during our other session, I'm going to be showing some initial observations from the role plays that the students did before and after the program. These are doctor-patient role plays, and I'm focusing on the role of the doctor, and I'm looking at how what progress, whether they progressed or not in their ability to interact and conduct the interview. And that's all for me and for us. Thank you.